Hi, Frank Flegg here, founder of Ethical Property Partners. We help our clients to build their SPI businesses, their sophisticated property investing businesses, to the stage where they are earning a six-figure income in cash flow every single year whilst building their net worth beyond their wildest dreams. Some of our clients are doing a deal every single month, which is absolutely fantastic for them and brilliant for their families and their future financial freedom. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to you about how you can conduct help visits. That is where you go and visit a vendor and do the negotiation, the face-to-face negotiation in 2021, a post-COVID era whereby things have changed. Things have changed forever. They talk about the new normal, but actually vendors are still needing to sell their properties. So, in this episode, I'm going to cover 5 tips, 5 things to realize when going out to see a vendor, when conducting a help visit. The biggest mistake that I see, and I see it over and over, I see it from novice investors, which perhaps can be forgiven, and I see it from experienced investors, which really is unforgivable, and that is trying to sell on email. I see long emails, and then the vendor emails back some objections, and then another long email. You cannot sell via email. It doesn't work. You cannot sell via email. You cannot buy, and if you're thinking to yourself, hang on Frank, I'm not selling, I'm trying to buy houses. No. You're selling. You're selling yourself, you're selling a solution to the vendor. You have to get into the mindset of us being salespeople. And if you don't like being a salesperson, if you can't get your head around the fact that you can serve someone and make money at the same time, then you're in the wrong business. We are salespeople. We are providing solutions to vendors who no one else can help. And because that is such a valuable solution, because it's such a valuable offering, we get paid handsomely for it. We get cash flow, we get equity, we get the properties. So the first factor to consider, my first top tip for 2021 COVID pandemic times help visits, is you still have to go. You still have to go and do a face-to-face help visit. Now let's think about that. Hang on, Frank. What about the fact that you're not allowed to go into someone else's home? Well, actually, that's not true. Even if we're in lockdown, every stage of every lockdown, you've still been allowed to go to someone else's home for business, if that business couldn't be conducted otherwise. Well, we have to build relationships with our vendors, and so we have to go into their home. So yes, you're allowed to go into someone's home for business. A carer has to go into someone's home to bathe an elderly client. They don't sit on their sofa and go, well, you just got to get smelly because I'm not allowed in your house. No, there are professions that are required to go into someone's home in order to carry out that business, and ours is one of them, unless the vendor is uncomfortable with it. And so during 2020 and 2021 to date, we have been buying properties without even seeing them. And so if the vendor says, well, I'm self-isolating at the moment, or I'm shielding someone, etc., then of course we respect their wishes, and we can do a Zoom help visit, we can do a FaceTime help visit, etc. However, what we have to have in our head is that we're serving our clients. And the way that we serve our clients is to give them the best possible experience. And the best possible experience is building as much rapport as possible, building as much trust, because what they really want deep down is to sell their property. And they're only going to sell their property to us if we build enough relationship with them, if we allow them to trust us. The best way of that is face-to-face, pressing the flesh, as they say. Now, we're probably not going to shake hands in 2021, but we can still sit socially distanced, 2 meters apart, and we can still have a substantial discussion with them if they're comfortable with it. Now, second best to that is a Zoom meeting, but you're still aiming for at least an hour with that person. So people sometimes think, oh, it takes me 5 minutes to walk around a house. Okay, I'll spend 10 minutes chatting to them. I'll be there 15 minutes. You will never do a sophisticated deal in 10 or 15 minutes. It's impossible, because you won't be able to build enough trust. So whether you go to someone's house, which is above and beyond the most preferable way of doing it, or whether it's on a virtual meeting, you still need to make sure that that meeting's at least an hour long. And if that fills you with dread, if you can't imagine how you could chat to a stranger about buying their house for an hour, then you need to come on some of our trainings and learn how to do that, because that's the only way that you're going to do these deals, by understanding their lives, by understanding their problems, so that then you can come up with a solution. It's like walking into a doctor's surgery and a doctor's saying, you need these pills, and you go, hang on, I haven't told you what's wrong with me yet. You haven't examined me. You know nothing about me. Yeah, but these are the pills that most people want. It's the same with buying a property. It's like, I'll give you this for it, but you know nothing about me. You don't know what the best solution is for me. You've just assumed that I want full market value right now, and you've just made me an offer. And so spending that hour with people is absolutely critical, because then you can understand their situation, you can understand their problems, you can understand their priorities, and you can come up with a solution that works for them. So that's the first thing. It has to be face-to-face. If it's not going to be face-to-face, it has to be face-to-face virtually. Third to that is on the phone, which is a really weak way of negotiating, because you miss out on all the non-verbal cues. You can't see the body language, etc. That's harder on virtual than face-to-face. Face-to-face, you can see the whole person. You can sense where they're sitting, how you're sitting. We teach a lot of body language, a lot of non-verbal communication on the partnership. If you resort to text and email, you're losing all the tonality, all the intonation, etc. in your voice. It's really, really hard then to build rapport and trust. So that's my top tip. Face-to-face if possible, virtual if not, based on their requirements, not yours, based on what they want, how they feel. Secondly, a lot of people at the moment are feeling a bit down in the dumps about how hard it is to invest in property. Well, I would turn that on its head. If it's hard to go and meet vendors at the moment, if it's hard to get refurbishment done, if it's harder to do what was easy last year, then that's an opportunity for us. And you have to embrace that opportunity and get excited about it and take advantage of that. When there are changes, Warren Buffett says this. Warren Buffett says, when there are changes in the environment, that is good for us, because when there's consistency, people get used to doing the same things, and more people jump on the bandwagon, and then there's more competition from people trying to buy property. But when it's really up in the air and it's changing quickly and no one's, the dust hasn't settled yet, that's when there's the opportunity. So embrace this change. Every time there's a new announcement, every time something changes in the economy, think to yourself, this is exciting, this is positive, this is an opportunity for me. That's certainly how we're viewing it at the moment, and we're buying more properties at the moment than we've ever bought. Our rate of acquisition at the moment is through the roof because there are massive opportunities. It is now a buyer's market, and it's going to get more and more like a buyer's market over the next few months and years, in my opinion. When you go out to meet your vendor, and this is so important, you have to dress in a way and present yourself in a way that is not going to intimidate them. And so let me explain how. In fact, you can't see my bottom half, right? But I'm in jeans and I'm wearing some smart shoes, not flashy shoes, but smart shoes. This is what I would actually wear. I'd wear a shirt. I perhaps wouldn't be quite so loud. Some of my colourful check shirts are a bit loud, but I'd certainly have a collared shirt on, and I'd normally wear like a V-neck sweater. And I have this saying, and if you've watched a lot of my videos, you might have heard this before. I want to leave, when I leave their house, I want them to think to themselves, that guy Frank was a nice boy. He's the son or the grandson that depending on their age, that I never had. That's how much I want them to like me. I want them to think, I'm very polite. I say thank you. I say please. I take my shoes off when I go into their house. I'll even offer to put the kettle on. If the dog's scratching at the door, I say, would you like me to let your dog out for you? If there's a light bulb on the table and the light's not working, I'll say, would you like me to can I help with that at all? Obviously not in the first 5 minutes, but I'm really, really invested in them. They are the only things that I'm interested in. Like, my phone is turned over face down on the table on silent. I have no distractions whatsoever. I've cleared my diary for the next 2 hours, even though I'm only expecting to be there an hour, in case it goes really well. I don't want to be checking my watch. All of these things are really, really critical. So how you dress is important. I'd always be clean shaven. I would, I'd make sure I brush my teeth in that. I'd make sure my shoes are clean. I'd make sure my car is clean. You want to create no reason for the other person to dislike anything about you. And it goes without saying that you don't talk about controversial topics. So you wouldn't comment on the government and their performance over the pandemic. You wouldn't comment on Black Lives Matter. It doesn't matter how passionately you think about it, because those are polarizing topics. You wouldn't talk about Donald Trump, for example, because as soon as someone gets on their high horse, you're either being incongruent, as in you're not being honest, you're pretending to be someone you're not, or you're going to be yourself and you're going to be strong for what you believe in, and you're going to alienate your vendor, neither of which is helpful. Your sole purpose for being there is to serve them and provide a solution to their property problem, which is going to be buying their house. 9 times out of 10 it's buying their house. And so anything you do that makes that less likely is not a service to the vendor. That's actually a disservice to the vendor. So how you dress, what you talk about, how you've presented yourself is very, very important. Equally important is what you take with you, or more importantly, what you don't take. So people make the mistake of having a satchel. They might even have a handbag or something if you're female. You don't want to be carrying stuff. When they open the door, they're going to do a subconscious, so this is non-conscious thought. So they're not actually thinking through this. This is instantaneous about how threatened they are by you. And if you're already a big person, you need to take a couple of steps back. Not be too distant, but you need to just be 2 steps further back. If you're a smaller person, I'm pretty small, I'm below average height, then you're fine. But make sure you're not on the same level as them. Make sure you're one step down if there's a couple of steps up to the house, etc. And you don't want to be carrying anything. When I walk into a house, I have my valuation paperwork folded in half. So it's about, postcard size facing them down by my side. I've got a pen in my pocket. I have my phone in my pocket, only because I need a calculator. Otherwise I'd leave my phone in the car. And I have my car keys. And that is it. A pen, a piece of paper, your phone and your car keys. That is all you should have with you. You don't need your lipstick. You don't need your laptop. You don't need anything, because anything else that you're carrying is intimidating them. And you might think, like I say to my clients, go take your coat off. And they're like, Frank, it's February. Why do I have to take my coat off? And I said, because the car's there and their front door's there, and you're adding all this bulk. Like little Mrs. Jones, who's 75 years old, doesn't want to be intimidated by 2 people knocking on her door, let alone 2 big people knocking on their door. And so we take our coats off, and I go in my V-neck sweater, even though it's freezing and it's February. I've got to walk 50 yards. Is it worth me walking 50 yards and getting slightly cold, so that when Mrs. Jones opens the door, or Mr. Smith, or whoever it is, they can see a clean, well-presented, unintimidating, friendly person who's there to help them with their property problem. It's so critical, guys. And some of you will be thinking, whatever, Frank, whatever, this is just over the top. I know how to sell. I know how to sell. Do you know what? I've never told myself that. After years of teaching myself this stuff, of reading and studying it, I still go on sales seminars now. I still read sales books now, even though I teach this stuff, because you should never stop learning this craft. You should never stop learning how to serve vendors. And I don't do lots of little Mrs. Jones negotiations now. I don't do many one house purchases. I do more portfolio purchases, etc. But it doesn't matter if you're speaking to someone about 1 property or you're speaking to someone about 50 properties. It's the same principle. People buy from people, and unless you can build that relationship, unless you can build that trust, you're just going to lose out on deals. And you can tell yourself whatever. You can say, well, they were a time waster, or they were not ready to buy, or, well, they wanted too much for their property. All rubbish. All of those are reflections on you, on whether you built enough trust with the individual. And the stuff I'm teaching you, the stuff I'm sharing with you now, is what helps you to build that trust. Because people will, at the end of a meeting, have a warm and fluffy feeling and want to sell you the property, or they'll have a little feeling in their tummy, a little gut feeling they might call it, of not sure about him. And that's down to that non-conscious impression you've made. All of those little, did they take their shoes off? They're not sat there thinking, hey, he's not taking his shoes off. Like, it's not like you're going to walk in and put your shoes on their coffee table, you know, put your feet up, lie back, you know. So, Mr. Smith, what's the lowest you're going to sell your house to me then? We're not going to be stupid about it, but all of these little tips that I'm giving you here add up to a really successful help visit, a really strong first meeting with the vendor. And remember, if you're following the SPI system, the EPP system for sophisticated property investing, you're closing at the end of that meeting. You're making an offer and you're signing them up onto a legally binding option agreement in your first meeting. Now that might blow some of your minds. Seriously, Frank? Yeah, we do all the paperwork. We do all of the paperwork other than the TR1 and the contract in the first meeting. It's all done there and then. And that's because we pay attention to these small things. We make sure that we maximize the chance of success, because we know that once we've left their house, they're less likely to sell to us. And if we have to come back a second time, they're less likely to sell to us. So we make the most of the opportunity we have when we're with them, which again, if you think about this, is why a virtual help visit is a lot harder. It's still possible and still highly successful, especially when people aren't able to meet us, because then we're competing with other people that can't do in-person help visits. So there's swings and roundabouts. So the fourth tip, and I've hinted at this already, is don't use email. Do not use email to negotiate. You can email to say, looking forward to seeing you at 10:30 on Wednesday morning. Shall I park on the driveway? Shall I park on the road? That's fine, but not to say, you asked me a few questions, here are the answers. That needs to be done on the phone, that needs to be done face to face. So do not negotiate by email, that's my fourth tip. And my fifth tip is that you need to be breaking bread with your vendors. And you might be thinking to yourself, how can I eat with them, Frank? Like, we're not even supposed to be meeting with them. No, you're allowed to be meeting with them, that's fine. I've got clients who are now like the best customers of Starbucks. You know why? Because on the way to their help visits, they're stopping at Starbucks and picking their drinks. And here's the thing, you don't want to take an order because that, you know, takes away the spontaneity. So if there's two of you and you're meeting with one vendor, order a selection of drinks. Order a black coffee, order a white coffee, and order a cup of tea. And you go there with the three drinks and you say, we got a Starbucks for you. Would you prefer a white coffee, a black coffee, or a tea? How amazing is that? Thank you so much, especially if it's someone who doesn't live at the property, especially if it's an empty property and they've taken it with them. Because we have to recognise that we are in times when people are less comfortable spending time with us. So we're going to sit at the furthest away chair from them. We're going to perhaps wear gloves when we go in and we're holding the coffees and we hand it to them with a glove and then we take the gloves off or whatever. Obviously we're wearing masks. We've got some funky EPP masks now that, you know, you've got an opportunity to look more professional. Why not have it branded? So we all wear our professional ethical property partners masks. But you need to be breaking bread with them. You need to be having a drink, because that hour-long conversation, that hour-long rapport building session where we finish by making our offer needs to be a relaxed affair, needs to be broken up with some social interaction. And the best way of doing that is to actually have a cup of tea, have a cup of coffee. Now, if it's not possible in the actual property itself, you can do it outside of the property. If that's not possible and restaurants are open, I know they're open and then they're closed and then they're open, you might be able to go to a McDonald's and have a coffee at a McDonald's, for example. But you need to be working out how, with the vendor feeling comfortable, you can spend more time with them. Because it's only by spending time with them that you can find out what their problems are. It's only when you know what their problems are that you can propose solutions, and it's only when they trust you enough that they're going to accept one of your solutions. Guys, if you've enjoyed this episode, then please do click the notification bell, hit the subscribe button. You will then be notified each and every time I create a new one of these videos. We're now releasing 2 of these videos every single week. If you want even more entertainment from me, even more education from me, then you can also subscribe to our podcast. We put out at least 2 podcasts a week now. You can listen to our YouTube videos on the podcast. You can listen to my long form interviews where I interview experts in the property investing arena. I interview successful franchisees who are doing the business on the floor. They are telling you how they have built those property portfolios over their first few years, over their first few months. And so if you'd like more of my content, then you can find us on the podcast platform, whichever podcast platform you use. Otherwise, I will see you on an episode soon. Until then, happy investing.